The new Queen of One Piece is here! Hello and welcome to the table, and today I'm back for another One Piece deck tech video. Today, talking about Nami, with her new EB03 support, and man, if there has ever been a time to enjoy and build and play Nami, it is now. Because this 4-life 5k yellow-blue leader says on your turn once a turn, when a card is removed from your or your opponent's life cards, and you have 7 or less cards in your hand, you draw a card. Great start if your opponent takes damage on your turn, no matter how it may be, through means of, just attacking them or other cards I'll get to later down the line. I mean, you just draw cards. That's awesome. That's great. Great, wonderful start. And it works for yourself too, which can allow you to do some extra shenaniganry. But then, if you have a Dawn under Nami on your opponent's attack once per turn, you can trash a card from your hand and then give this leader plus 2k power, not for the battle, but for the turn. And that is really stupid, because a 7k, from what I've been told, is pretty good. And all things considered, this deck was already good, to a point. Now, it's even better. Now, why may that be? Because this deck loves to curve. It loves to just play all of its stupid value cards on curve. You want to play this, into this, into this, into this. You just want to get the most value possible, ensure that your opponent doesn't get tempo over you. You just want all the tempo. You want to curve out so you can do all the stupidest stuff as early as possible with your deck, and then just outvalue your opponent and kill him. The deck is pretty simple, at least the game plan part of it. Actually playing the deck, yeah, it can be more complicated, but I'm going to make it as simple as I can with this breakdown by just talking about the curve. So let's start with the curve, talking about, well, Will You Be My Servant? This card, and I think this deck, in my opinion, wants to go first. So, you want to play this on turn 1. This card being a 1-cost new event from EB03 that makes the deck so much more consistent, because as a main effect, if your leader is Nami, thank God she is, you get to look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with a cost of 2 to 8, and add it to your hand, and place the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. As far as searcher events go, I don't think there's ever been one more absurd than this. Yes, it's leader locked, but does that really matter? Because this card, and yeah, obviously you can't play it in 1,000 decks, so it matters. But what I mean by that is this card can basically get anything in your deck besides itself and 1/2 of in the deck. Besides that, this gets everything, and it triggers to activate its own effect. So basically, you're just always going to get value out of this card. There's no way you're going to whiff. And it just is great. So you want to play it on turn 1. That's what you want to do. Then on turn 2, you want to play 1 or 2 different cards, more than likely. Nojiko being one of those, a 2-cost 0 power 1k counter character that on play, if your leader is Nami, you get to bounce one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less back to their hand. Great tempo. Don't necessarily want to play it on the first turn, but depending on what you've got in hand, it can be really nice. And what I mean by that is putting another 2 of in the deck. This card is really good to play if you're going even, especially a Nojiko into a pudding, a 4-cost 4k 1k counter character that on play, if your opponent, your opponent just returns all cards in their hand to their deck, shuffles their deck, and then draws 5 cards. So kind of like the ideal situation to play a Nojiko is you're going second, you play this, you bounce your opponent's first play, a searcher, back to their hand, maybe you deal a damage to your opponent on the following turn, and then you play a pudding, and then boom, your opponent's going to discard, basically, like effectively, they're going to discard 2 cards, maybe 3 cards, it depends, and maybe like they searched twice. If you bounce the searcher back and they played it again for whatever reason, like you're getting rid of a lot of good cards from your opponent's hand. It's just great. That's kind of the ideal. If you're going even curve to a point, you still, in my personal opinion, want to play the premier 2-drop of the deck. Young Girl. Now, on an odd curve, it's also incredibly strong, even though it's a 2-drop, which makes it semi-awkward. But this card is a 2-cost 0 power 1k counter character that on play draws you a card and then trashes you a card. Or trashes a card from your hand. And then as an activate main, once a turn, you can give Arrested Dawn to your Nami. That's great, because it doesn't just say leader, it could be any Nami. Now technically there's only one more Nami in the deck, but it's a pretty good one. But yeah, Young Girl is a really powerful card in the deck. Now, I do want to mention something super quick. I'm saying that this deck wants to go first. The deck can go first or second and do just fine. I think it kind of depends on the matchup. If you want to be more aggressive, obviously go first because you're going to have your more aggressive curve. If you want to go second, generally you kind of want to be more defensive. You can steal your opponent's curve super easily and just kind of still play super valuable stuff and valuable cards. Once EB04 comes out, you will be more wanting to play first. With this current list, I think you could go either way with it. I personally think you want to go first, but you could go either way and see plenty of success, which is another wonderful part about this deck. But then you got Kiku Nojo, a card that you primarily want to trigger out, but it's a good card to play too, because this 4-cost 6k no-K counter character says on KO, if your opponent has 3 or less life cards, you add the top card of your deck to your life. And it triggers to, if your opponent has 3 or less life cards, play it. That's great, especially with this deck being more aggressive than it used to be, thanks to a card I'll get to here in a second. But the other reason that, like, this card's perfectly fine in the deck is because the card's just broken. But even if, like, for example, like, the trigger wasn't in the deck, yeah, the card's gonna be clunky, but the wonderful part about this Nami deck is you can run bricks in the deck, cards that don't counter in the deck, and be perfectly fine with it because you can just use your leader ability, trash it away, and boom, it's like a perpetual 2k counter for the turn. That's absurd. So even though you might not be able to get value out of something like a Kiku Nojo from your hand, sometimes it's still going to do plenty of work. Which is another dumb part about this deck. Like with Marco. I think Marco's better than Kiku in ways. It can't trigger itself out, but it's a really good card because this 4-cost 6k blocker says on KO, you draw 2 cards. Yeah, it also doesn't counter, but it's an on-rate body that blocks and gets you more cards in hand when you die, or when it dies. And this deck can sometimes run into issues of like getting down to too few cards in hand. And having this to draw you more cards is really, really nice. Now, I think once EB04 comes out, like the second half of EB04 for the West, obviously, there will be a new Borsalino, which is a 5-cost 6k blocker that counters for 1, and an on-play, if you have 2 or less life, gains you a life. I think that card will be better in the deck than Marco to a point. I'll have to test around with it. I personally think it is. I know most lists that have, you know, access to that Borsalino do play it over the Marco. Some lists still do. And some lists play a little bit of both. But I think the Borsalino is going to be better, especially to make the deck a little bit more aggressive. But yeah, I like Marco in the deck a lot. And any 6k, like Marco, like Kiku Nojo in the deck, simply because of the fact that Nami exists. The new MVP of this deck. This card is so good, and I really wish it was leader locked to Nami. But what are you gonna do? This card is really good. It's a 5-cost 6k 1k counter character that does a lot. Firstly, on play, you give 1 Rested Dawn card to your leader. Great start. That's exactly what you want to do with this deck. Then, if your opponent has 3 or less life card, or 3 or more life cards, your opponent adds the top card of their life cards to their hand. So, boom, you're going to burn a card from your opponent's life, and you instantly get to draw a card off of the Nami, your leader Nami effect, because they're losing life. It doesn't have to be through damage. It can also be through means such as this, which is really cool, because it basically replaces itself. It deals, kind of, a damage to your opponent and gives Arrested Dawn to your leader. But wait, there's more. On KO, you can turn the top card of your life face up and then play a character with a 6k power or less from your hand. By the way, this includes itself. So you can play another one of these Namis, get the value off of that, great start. On top of that, you could play a wide range of 6k power characters in this deck, such as the Marco, such as the Kiku. Be super duper happy with that. But there's another card that I think is worth having as a 2 of in this deck. That card being Rayleigh. A card that I haven't had in the deck for very long, but man, I've been having so much fun with. Because this card can do work, and it is a great 2 of. I used to have Zeus in the deck as a 2k counter, and I do still think that's a very good card in the deck, especially want to be more budget friendly and get rid of Hiyori. But this card, if you're not going to run Zeus, I would try to run 2 copies of this, because having an effect that KOs one of your opponent's characters, higher cost characters especially, well, mid-ish cost characters is really nice. And this Rayleigh here is a 6k that you can play off a Nami, but on top of that, it's a 6 cost 6k 1k counter character that triggers to activate its on-play effect, which is the main reason why this card's good. Because on play, if your leader is multicolored, which it is, and your opponent has 3 or less life cards, thanks to new means such as this Nami effect, very likely to happen. But if your opponent does have 3 or less life cards, you get to KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 7k base power or less. So that could be a Nami, a Marco, a Kiku. There are so many cards that this can kill. It's insane. Now, granted, are there a lot of effects in this game that say, this can't be KO'd by your opponent's effects, or means such as that? Yes. But against decks that don't have that, this card's insane, and you want to see as many as you can get. But against decks where it's not good, yeah, you don't really want to see it. And if you do, it's at least a 1k counter body. And the trigger can sometimes still be nice to have. So, in general, yeah, the card's not broken and it's not going to make the deck insanely powerful, but especially against certain decks, can do a lot for you. And I think it's worth running as a 2 of for that reason. But then, I got another new card. The last one, Nico Robin. This card is awesome. It's a 7 cost 8k no K counter character that on play says you may trash the top card of your life cards, which does trigger your leader, your turn effect. It can, remove a life from your life. It's gotta be removed. Sure, it's getting trashed, but hey, with Nami, then you get to draw a card. Your leader, Nami, you get to draw a card. And oh, by the way, if you do trash the top card of your life cards, if your leader has a Straw Hat crew type, you add the top 2 cards from your deck to your life. So you're effectively gaining a life. And you might have wondered why Kuma isn't in the deck anymore. This is why, because it's a new Kuma. And the main reason why I think this deck wants to go odd now, because yes, the deck still likes to gain life and be defensive to a point, but with these new aggressive tools, you want to get as much value out of them as possible, as early as possible. So you want to curve Searcher into Young Girl, into the new Nami, into this Robin, because you're going to be gaining life, you're going to be burning away some of your opponent's life, you're going to be sending in 7Ks, you're going to be able to search. I mean, it's just awesome. And you get to do so much. It's insane. And on top of Robin basically being a new Kuma, gaining you a life, yeah, sure, it costs 1 more, but it has 1k more power. It doesn't counter. But it also has, in my opinion, an even stronger on KO. Because on your opponent's turn, on KO, you may deal 1 damage to your opponent. Yes, it doesn't heal you a life, but Kiku can heal you, and that's great. And having this way to burn is actually really good. Because with something like a Nami, it just adds the top card of your opponent's life. Doesn't trash. I mean, there are other cards, such as Kid, I'll get to in a second, that trash the top card of your opponent's life. But there aren't a lot of effects in this game that deal a damage to your opponent. And that's important, because if your opponent is dealt the damage and they have life, yeah, they just take it to their hand. But if they have no life left, then they just die. So if your opponent has 0 life left, they want to kill this Robin, well, they're just going to die. So this just is an 8k body that once you get to a certain point in the game, unless your opponent has a red rock, or means such as that, they just can't get rid of this. And that's really stupid. Really good. So that's why it's in the deck, and that's why I don't think you need Kuma. Because this does Kuma stuff and more, which is nice. And it's an SR versus a secret rare. A $50 secret rare, no less. But then, speaking of Kid, I got a 2 of Kid. And it costs 9k, no K counter body, that on play can rest itself and then trash the top card of your opponent's life cards. Yes, that draws you a card thanks to your Nami leader effect. That's awesome. And in a turn, if your opponent has 2 or less life cards, which by the time that you're playing this, are very likely going to have 2 or less life cards, you then get to draw a card and trash a card from your hand. So more filtering, that's nice. 9k body, that's nice. Trashes cards from your opponent's life, that's nice. This deck burns, it's defensive, it plays giant monsters, this is great. It can swarm because, you know, you kill one thing and it plays another thing. It's nice. But anyways, Kid, really good card in the deck as a 2 of. You want a top end, and Robin, yeah, as a 4 of, the card's just insane. But you want a top end, but you don't want to get too bricked up with your top end. So I think like having Kid as a 2 of, maybe a 3 of, and like cutting a Nojiko could be really good. And then I have Edward Newgate as a 2 of as well. This card, absurd. It's the only card besides Will You Be My Servant that can't be searched by Will You Be My Servant. So you play a Will You Be My Servant, there's literally 5 cards out of the top 4. Like if you hit 5 or 4 of those 5 cards, then yeah, you're gonna not be able to search. But the likelihood of that happening is so low, so yeah, whatever. You can't search this card with it, but it's fine. Hopefully you'll draw into it because this card's really good against certain decks because it's a 10 cost 12k blocker. It doesn't counter yes, but on play, draws you 2, trashes you 1, and then gives 2 Rested Dawn to your leader and 2 Rested Dawn to one of your characters. Yeah, so you're getting 6 Dawn back, or no, 4 Dawn back basically, kind of, but you're putting it on a character and leader, and you get a 12k blocker. This is dumb. This is really dumb. So yeah, it's a really nice card in the deck. And against certain decks, especially decks that like to go really tall, this is just a nice kind of way to be defensive for a little bit longer, which is really just valuable. And also, unless your opponent has a red rock, they're not really ever going to get rid of this card. And speaking of red rock, I want to talk about that card for a second. Because red rock, you don't really play this card on curve very often. You generally play this, like I'm kind of talking about it now, because you generally are going to be playing it around the time you'd be playing something like a Newgate. Because once your opponent starts playing their giant endgame threats, you can play this and have 4 Dawn left to either spread around to your characters or play something like a Marco down, which is super nice. And this is a 2 of simply for the reason that, yeah, it can be searched, but you don't really want too many of it in the deck, in my opinion. Like, it's a very valuable card, and you have a lot of ways to draw into it, whether it's by searching or just drawing. And I don't think, like, the card's really good. You can have it as a 3 of, yes. Like, cutting something like 1 Nojiko and putting in another copy of this. Or maybe cutting 2 Rayleighs and putting in 2 more copies of this. Like, I could argue putting in a full playset of this. I don't personally think you need more than 2, but that's just me. Because this card, it has a very simple effect. For 6 resources, it places one of your opponent's characters at the bottom of their attack. It can be a 10 cost, it could be a 9 cost, whatever it may be, it can get rid of it. And Another reason why it's only 2 of us is because there's a lot of cards in the game right now that say, "Your stuff cannot be removed from the field by your opponent's effects." So against those decks, this card's really bad. And, yeah. But it also triggers to place one of your opponent's cards with cost of 4 or less on the bottom of their deck. So that's cool. Characters. And, yeah, I mean, the card's just absurd. The card's absurd. It's just so free, like pudding. It's one of the most broken cards in the game. And you just play it because it's just that good. It's just that good. And again, once you get to the later portions of the game, if you can get rid of your opponent's giant monster, you just do it. And then have 4 Dom to do whatever you want with. So yeah, that's kind of the curve of the deck. There's a couple more cards I want to talk about. That being the 2K counters. One of which being Hiyori, a card that is really good because, as you've seen, there are a lot of triggers in this deck. A lot of very good triggers in this deck. More that I'll be talking about here in a second, actually. And Hiyori here, well, can be really helpful for that. Also, it's just a 2K counter. This 2 cost 0 power 2K counter character. This is on play. You can add the top card of your life to your, or top or bottom card of your life to your hand. And add 1 card from your hand to the top of your life. Yes, this triggers Nami, the Nami leader effect. That's great. If you play this, like if you're going even, you play this on turn 1, sweet, you get to basically cycle. And then you also get to stack the top card of your life. Put any trigger you want there, because you have 20 triggers in this deck. You're very likely going to have something to put on top and get value out of, which is really nice, really good. One of those potential triggers being Otama, another 2K counter. This one also being a 2-cost 0 power character, but its trigger rests one of your opponent's characters to the cost of 4 or less. That's stupid. So that's great. Love to see that. But if you do play it, it has an activate main to rest itself, add the top card of your life, top or bottom card of your life to your hand, triggers the Nami effect, and it gives up to one of your leader characters plus 3k power for the turn. It's not insane. It can matter sometimes very nichely, but generally it's a 2k counter or something like you can hope to trigger off a life or maybe stack on top of your life with something like a Hiyori. If you're playing against a deck that goes super wide, like in a Heroine Cup, for example, that's coming up, you play against something like a Bello Betty, you can rest one of their many, many attackers and just be happy because you're very likely going to be able to live for another turn thanks to that. So that's really nice. But then the last 2k counter of the deck is another one that has a trigger. Baby 5. This card's trigger, saying if your leader is multicolored, it is, you draw 2 cards. Very nice. Yeah, sometimes it's not going to be very good to draw 2 cards because it could be a brick and a 1k counter or 2 bricks. That might have happened a couple of times to me when I was testing with this deck, but the card is really good. Really, really good. Because the trigger's nice. It's a 2k counter. And it's a 4-cost 5k body. So, yeah, you're never going to really play it out. But, like, if you need something to play off of the Nami, yeah, you're very likely going to have something like a Rayleigh or a Marco or a Kiku or another Nami. But anyway, Baby 5, it's a really good card in the deck. Mostly for the trigger, and that's a 2k counter, but it's really good. Out of all the 2k counters in the deck, this is the one that I think is the weakest, which is crazy to me. Hiyori is just insane. Otama is insane. This card is also good. You could replace it with a Beji if you really wanted to, or a Zeus. Personally, I think this card is better than Zeus to a point. It just depends on what kind of decks you're going to be playing against. If you want to be able to KO more of your opponent's stuff in an emergency situation, play the Zeus. If you have, like, a lot of Zoros that your opponent, or, like, if you are going to see a lot of Zoros, or something where it really matters for you to be able to turn off an attack coming at you, then play Beji. But if you just want to lean into the value side of the deck as much as you can, play the Baby 5. That's why I have it in the deck. It's more value. It's another 2k counter that can nichely be played. But it also just can get you so much value. So that's why it's in the deck. But that is the deck. I think this deck is absurdly fun. And because Kuma is no longer needed in the deck, I think it is way less expensive than it used to be, which is awesome. Love to see that. And, I mean, yeah, it's going to be impossible to get EB03, but eventually there's going to be another wave, so you'd like to think that this deck will be affordable eventually. And who knows, maybe there's enough product opened, hopefully earlier, to where Nami and Robin are very cheap to get. Who knows? It's probably not going to be likely, but I can cope. Please. But I hope you all enjoy this video. I hope you all enjoy the new Queen of One Piece because, yeah, Boa's a fun deck. Boa's a good deck. To a point, yeah, it's better than Nami, but I personally think with the fact that this deck is good into Boa, like really good into Boa in my opinion, the fact that it's kind of like also pretty aggressive, it can burn your opponent's life, it can heal, it can remove stuff, like there's a lot that this deck can do that makes it like just really good aggressively and being able to like manage your opponent's tempo. But on top of that, also being a defensive stalwart, I think this deck just has a lot of little things that just compound together to make this deck really good. So, I hope now that you all will enjoy playing the stupidity that is the new Queen of One Piece. Leave a comment down below telling me who you think the Queen of One Piece is. If you're looking forward to EB03 and not being able to get any of it for the next 5 months. And with all that aside, I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It's completely free on credits. Check out my pack opening series right here. And until more EB03 stuff comes out, check out my latest video that I just put up for Zoro, one of my favorite decks in this game that has gotten quite a bit better and maybe is a secret menace. But with all that aside, I will see you all there.